Good morning everyone. So today we will be discussing about Appian interview question which are generally asked from process model. There are some scenario based questions as well while we will be discussing the interview questions. So coming on to our first question, that is, what is MNI, that is multiple node instance in a process model. So you can comment your answers below if you already know the answer, and if you don't know the answer, that's alright. We will be coming up with the video soon where we will be discussing all the answers which we have presented over here. So moving further to our next question, how we can schedule a process model to trigger at a specific time. This is one of the way by which the interview wants to know that whether you can schedule a process model at a specific time or not. So moving on further with our next question, that is, how can you optimize a process model having 200 nodes? So the interviewer generally asks this question when the application is on production environment and they want to make some changes onto it, right? So it might be possible that the previous development was not so good, so later on they want to modify or rectify the changes. So that's why, in order to know how you will optimize objects within Appian, they are asking this question. So moving on further with our next question, that is, give an example of using escalation and exception based on a real life scenario. You might know that what is escalation and what is exception in a process model, but can you give a real life example? Where will you use escalation and where will you use exception? So you can comment down your answers below. If you don't know the answer, I'm telling you again, we will be coming up shortly with a video where we will be discussing all the answers for this question. So moving on further with our next question, that is, where should we use short-lived processes and long-lived processes? So for that you need to be aware that what are short-lived process and what are long-lived processes. So go through the documentation, research a bit, and then you will get to know your answer. If you feel stuck, just drop a comment below and we'll be happy to help you over here. Now moving on further with our next question, which is a scenario based question as well. If we set up a 3-day archival policy inside the data management tab in a process model, can we bring back the archived process instance to the system after 3 days? If your answer is yes, then you need to give a brief reason that how you can bring it back, right? If your answer is no, then I think you need to go through the documentation and learn about the archival policies again. So now moving on further with our next question, what we have over here on the screen. What are gateways in process model and how will you identify when to use which gateway? So just a brief hint that there are 4 gateways and each gateway has a different use case. Although there is a combination that you can use multiple gateways at a single time as well. So you need to give your answers and we'll be discussing them shortly. So moving on further with our next question, which is from the interview perspective as well. Can we deploy process instances? Although you might be aware that whenever we run any process model or whenever we trigger any process model, we create an instance of that process model. So the question is, can we really deploy that process instance to a higher environment? Let's say you have a developer environment over here, dev environment you can say, and you want to move the process instance to a higher environment, that is a UAT environment, right? So can you do that? So comment down the answers below and We'll let you know that whether you are wrong or whether you are right. So moving on further with our next question, which is again a important question in terms of interview perspective. While calling a sub process, whenever we are calling a sub process, we have that option when we are passing the variable as a reference and passing the variable directly as a value. So what is the difference between them? So you need to tell what exactly is the difference between passing the variable as a reference and passing the variable as a value. Right, comment your answers below, and we are moving on further with our next question, that is, how activity chaining decrease performance? You might know that we are using activity chaining for a certain reason, but are you aware that activity chaining decreases the performance of a process model? If you are aware, then you need to tell us how it is decreasing the performance by commenting your answers below in this video. So moving on further with our next question, that is, give a use case scenario where will you use process start form. Although you might know the difference between process start form and user input task, but can you give a real life scenario, or can you give a use case scenario where would you use a process start form? Right, so this is all about Appian interview question from the process model, which are most probably asked in the interviews. So let me know your thoughts on this one, and happy learning guys. Bye bye.